Welcome, everyone, to today's podcast. Well, let me get you thinking about who I'm going to be interviewing today. What are good leaders doing to create an ultimate ripple effect that others simply don't? I'm joined today with the most amazing lady from Iowa, all the way from the USA, Lisa Evan. She is a keynote speaker, a best-selling author, and leadership coach who helps teams create what she calls a good ripple effect. And as you can see in the background, she's promoting her logo, her brand, but more importantly, it's what she believes in. With a background in healthcare operations and team leadership, she now works with companies like ESPN, Shrum, and Disney to teach leaders how to show up with presence, build trust fast, and shape stronger cultures. She's also the host of Have Good Ripple Effect podcast, and I'll be putting the links in the show notes on that. And today she's here to bring insight, energy, and practical tools you won't want to miss. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thank you for having me.
It's great. I mean, here I am. It's early morning. It's about 8 o'clock here in Australia, and there you are, the wind down on your Thursday. It's the start up on our Friday here, and yeah, in Iowa. And I was saying to Lisa before we started, for many of the states that I've been to, I haven't been to Iowa, but Lisa is about to go to Scottsdale. And as you know, listeners, I'm just back from there. So we've been sharing tips on the best restaurants and, of course, clothes shopping to go to. But let's get down to the real point here about why I've got Lisa on. Because listeners, when I learned about Lisa, I thought this is going to be ideal for what you're looking for because leadership is no longer just that one person at the helm directing everybody. It is creating this a beautiful ripple effect. Now, in my world, I call it that igniting that potential in others, seeing what they don't or they see in themselves. But that ripple effect is just such a beautiful terminology, Lisa. I love that. So, that's what your message is all about, is creating that good ripple effect in leadership and culture. What sparked this idea for you, and why do you believe it's so crucial in today's workplace?
Yeah. It's funny. I wish I had some amazing moment where it was like, ta-da! But it was really actually kind of tucked into the day-to-day of operational leadership. I managed large teams for a number of years, and I would always say to them, and I think they knew that my energy, I was a little bit quirky, because I would hold my hands up like a cup, and I would say, guys, this is our ecosystem to build, maintain, and protect. And I was dead serious. I'm literally like, the environment that we work in is so important. It is
Mm.
our job to keep these waters clean. It's our job to have good ripple effect. And that's kind of what I would say almost day in and day out to my
Gosh.
team without much thought.
Mm.
And then when I left corporate America and was doing, training and speaking, which is what I do now,
Mm.
that really was like when I think about what I want for leaders, is I want for them to be able to do that. And then I also, like you said, help others
Mm.
do it too.
Yes, yeah. But isn't it interesting? It's just something that just came so naturally to you. And then you were able to move that out of that corporate world and begin a business. And obviously, being very successful in that and continuing that ripple effect. And I think when I think about that ripple effect, as you've got there with the circles going out, you're on stage, you're presenting to a group of people who then take it away and that
They
ripple
do.
continues. And you just don't know where it's going to end,
I
do you?
know.
So, your experience working with companies like ESPN and Disney, my favorite, what are some of those biggest cultural blind spots, leaders often, overlook, especially when teams are under pressure? Because, when everything's going well, oh, everything's fine, isn't it? But when it's under pressure, yeah, what are your thoughts?
I think the biggest thing is really to start, I would say, like, look inward, like
Mm.
really quick, time out, you're busy. I worked in neurosciences and healthcare. So we were giving patients bad news hour in and hour out. So if you think about a highly regulated, really intense environment, and most of the people that are there are now going to get news that their lives are changing forever.
Mm.
I think about like, okay, it wasn't sunshine and rainbows. It was literally like, hi, when they say it's brain surgery, I'm like, that was us.
Yes.
And so when you think about being in an environment like that, the first thing to do is look inside. And I'll
Mm.
never forget. We were doing our morning meeting. We did a quick morning meeting as a group. we like the meeting ended and then we had one of our providers walked through and it was so cute. One of the people that was still standing there, she goes, Dr. So and so is always, a little bit disheveled and a little bit cute because she was like the cutest lady with like a million papers and her hair was always disheveled and she was like a mad scientist and everyone just adored her. And when she walked by, this team member of mine said, she's just always a little disheveled. Well, then they got telling each other, well, how do you show up? And how do you show up? And how do you show up? And they got to me. And one of my team members, Haley, without skipping a beat, goes, Lisa, you kind of show up, I don't know, kind of busy. And I
Oh,
remember being like horrified. I
mm.
was like, I am not busy. I am so fun. I have so much energy, and I kind of laughed my way through the moment of like, oh, ha, ha. But
Yeah.
as I walked back to my office, I realized because our presence is the
Mm.
present, right? It's the gift.
Yes.
The
Mm.
gift that I was giving was busy. And
Yeah.
I think for a lot of leaders, especially in high pressure areas, we believe on behalf of our teams that it's really important for us to be busy or very like,
Mm.
I don't know, what do you call it, like stern. And
Yes.
it's almost like you don't realize the ripple effect of what you're bringing into the room. They always say, like,
Mm.
you bring the weather. And I think
Yes.
about that as being one of the easiest, quickest, best ways to create a better ripple effect is to be in charge of that. Like,
Mm.
I live in a place where we have snow and
Hmm.
we prepare for the snow. So you would
Yes.
prepare, right? You would prepare to walk into a room just like we would prepare and put on snow gear.
Yes, yeah. It's not as though, oh, well, it's just, oh, this is something new. Uh, but
Yeah.
it's interesting because, when you talk about, being seen, being busy, because we use that terminology a lot, don't we? People go, oh, how are you?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm busy. Well,
Busy.
what does busy actually mean? What does it mean inside our heads and, to our
Mhm.
emotions? But how is it being seen on the outside? And you're right, we've all been in restaurants or or shops or anywhere where you can see a leader. It's that bustle. They get that really stern look and they're bustling along,
Yeah.
and you start to think, oh, what's happened? And it
Yeah.
starts to cause that ripple effect of chaos, of
It
not people
does.
perhaps concerned that there's something wrong, or you see somebody literally darting from A to B, and they may just be thinking and moving fast, but it's that outside, it's the negative effect that it's having on people,
It
not
is.
just your team, but also your
I would,
customers. Yeah.
yeah.
What
It's like we,
in?
and I think we like the adrenaline. The adrenaline is
Yes,
so
yes.
addicting and it
Mm,
feels good. And so sometimes
yes.
it's like, okay, time out.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't know you came from that background of neuroscience, and I'm just thinking it's so very different to what you were saying, but that ripple effect would have been so impactful because it was how you deliver that information. You couldn't do that in a
Absolutely.
hurry, could you?
No. And
No.
I think that, like I said, it's not always the big moments where the
Mm,
ripple effect occurs. It's like in those teeny tiny itsy bitsy moments,
yes.
and those are
Mm,
quick. So if you're sitting
yes.
there thinking like this is going to take a lot of work, I'm like, actually, these are like 20-second quick moments that you
Mm,
can really start to tinker with
yes,
to really
yes.
change the game.
Yeah, to change and to get the message across as well. It's just not
Mhm.
lost in a whole lot of words. Yes.
Yeah.
You talk about identifying and addressing cultural dysfunctions. Well, that's
Yeah.
we really want to talk about that. What are a few signs leaders should be watching for that? And suggest that the culture might be quietly eroding because we hear a lot, don't we, about organizational culture and I've been thinking about for quite a while now, we want people to fit into our culture, but do then we create this homogenous group of cultures and thinking about having some diversity of thought. So I'd love you to, yeah, share a little bit more about that. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I culture is all the ways of being. So culture being all the ways of being, it's our habits, it's our traditions, it's our behaviors. It's literally like how we're showing up, much like we would in our community at large. But even in our team, I always say like in your little ecosystem, if you had those folks and they were right next to you, and I would ask them three things. Number one, how are they doing? Like, what's
Mm,
their attitude
yes, yeah.
today? And
Mm,
usually, if you're saying, well, we're grumpy, we're cranky, we're upset, we're complacent, whatever it may be that they're feeling, that's an indicator of culture because
yes.
attitudes, which are temporary, almost like snapshots of like, how are you today?
Mm, yeah.
Snap. Those turn into what I would consider behaviors or norms.
Mm,
So, what is it normal to see? And I give
yeah.
during a lot of my keynotes and breakout sessions, I give a lot of like fun but funny examples of like, well, maybe it's really normal for us to walk out of a meeting and turn to each other and say, that was a waste. That could have been an email. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's really common for someone on your team to hit reply all to everyone and maybe make a angry email.
Yeah.
What is it normal to
Mhm,
see? And
mhm.
those behaviors are really kind of, again, little indicators of, are we starting the meeting with a complaint and then just like round robining it? Or
Yes.
are we actually starting the meeting with a like, hey, I want to share some good news?
Mm,
Because attitudes turn into behaviors, which
yeah.
then ultimately turn into beliefs. And beliefs are the things like at our core that we
Mm,
believe. I'm going to ask you here in a second, like in healthcare, it is a really big belief that the patient comes first.
mm.
If I walked into a group of healthcare people and said, the patient does not come first, they would look at me like I'm ready to like punch you. In education, it's like the student is like everything for the student. In hospitality, what is it? What would be a belief like that of like we believe blank?
Yeah. The guest does come first, and all guests, no matter who they are, the age, where they come from, or the level of loyalty, it is the
Yeah.
guest. And to me, it comes through that culture is respecting everyone and
Yeah.
seeing people for who they are and that feeling of belonging, isn't it? They all
It's
come together.
huge.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that's as a leader, I would say like if you can get really good at being able to zoom in and zoom out, like
Mm.
assess and address, like if you've got like some cranky people, I'm like we have to address that behavior because that
Yes.
behavior, if left unchecked, will be turned into a belief
Mm.
where, you'll find people being like, "Ah, nothing changes around here." And I'm
Yes.
like, "Oh,
Yes.
no, 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 wait, 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 wait. No, no. Like I want to get my hands on every one of those little like behaviors that I don't like
Mm.
and kind of kick them to the curb. And I want to hold for dear life to the things that I do like. And I think
Yes.
those are some really easy opportunities
Mm.
to kind of be like, yeah, what are we seeing? What do we like? What do we
Mm.
want to get rid of?
And I think it comes down, what are we accepting? Are we accepting that poor
Mm.
behavior? Aren't they, Lisa? And I think, we hear too often the excuses, oh, well, they're about to retire or they're having a hard time at home or whatever, excuse, excuse, excuse. It's impacting how they show up, not only for, in the
Big.
case of the guest or the customer or the client or the patient, it's how they're showing up for the team, the
Yeah,
teammates. Because if they don't have the right
100%.
attitude, I'm sure their productivity is not as good as it could be either.
It's so true. The first time I heard someone, so I always say like, you need a team statement.
Mm,
You need a team statement, something that's almost like your motto. Ours was have good ripple effect. And
yeah.
the first time I heard someone in the hallway, like they couldn't tell that I was there, but it was like I overheard it. And one person looked at another and was like, dude, is that good ripple effect? And like
Oh,
I was off
wow.
to the side being like, that's it. They're
Yes.
starting to use it as a way to keep each other kind of accountable
Yes.
in
Yes.
their behavior and how like that's not what we do here. And
Mm,
I think that's like a really important piece of creating a team statement. And
mm.
then I literally would have it on like every agenda at the bottom of my email. I would say it every day to the point where people were like, okay, we get it.
We get
But
it.
I
Yeah.
was like, no, 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 like we live it. Like
Yes.
we live
Yes.
it.
And that's the thing, it's getting it is one thing, but living it is another. And just hearing them repeat it like that in the general conversation, it was they were now tying themselves to that. And that was
Do
the
it.
level of this is, I am not going to allow others to white ant whatever's being said in the
Yeah.
boardroom or around the table, or stop the gossip about another team
Yeah.
member. I think that's the biggest thing. It can ease people fall easily into that pattern of just going along because they don't want to say anything, but that
Yeah.
impacts that whole culture, doesn't it?
It
Yeah,
does.
it's no, I love it. So in hospitality, we're often managing compressed resources and high
Yes.
turnover, with people coming through. Really, if you look, I'm sure in that work with Disney and others, it's that churn. It's not churn and burn, but there are a lot of people coming through. So how can leaders still create a positive team culture in environments where everything feels urgent? Because the
Yeah.
customers today, the guests of today, whoever you're dealing with, tolerance does not seem to be part of the vocabulary anymore. Everybody is all about me. So, it's very fast moving. Everybody wants it urgent. Our other team members want it urgent. So what are some of your thoughts there, Lisa?
Yeah, I think from an urgency perspective, because it was very similar, like in healthcare, like you come to
Mm.
the ER, we save your life.
Yes,
Like
yes.
it's literally
Yes.
like life and death urgent,
Mm.
and it never ends. Healthcare is 24/7. I similar to hospitality. My mom was a hotel housekeeper for a number of years, and
Mm.
so she literally like saw the turnover of room after room after
Yes.
room. And I think that there's kind of a combination of if you're a good leader and you're getting people to want to stay in an environment that's maybe like a little hard, right? Like healthcare is hard, hospitality is hard.
Mm.
I think a lot of it has to do with, I call it like the PB&J type of interactions, where you really do want to know a little bit about them personally. Like
Yes.
you want to know a little bit like, do they have a dog? Do they have
Mm.
kids? And I also say that P is really around perspective. Like
Mm.
if you ask someone, let's say you're laying out, a rack of jeans, and if you as a leader turned to your team member and said, "What do you think?"
Mm.
That team member would probably be like,
You want my
what?
opinion?
Like, yeah, you want my opinion? And so I think that if you can start to get perspective wherever
Yes.
you can, and
Mm.
I think it has to be targeted. So you're not asking for perspective on everything, but you're
Mm.
just kind of saying, like, you know this well. You're here every day. What
Yes.
should we do? Like, is this in the way of, customer flow? Is this in
Mm.
the way of whatever it may be? So
Mm.
that's the P. The
Yes.
B is I'm often looking and encouraging people to give me new ideas on how to fix something.
Mm.
Like, what's the best way to do this? Like, is there something that's like a pain in your butt? And do
Mm.
you know how to fix it? Because a lot of
Yes.
times they'll be like, oh, yeah, that's been broken forever. I know
Mm.
how to fix it, but no one wanted to hear it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm like, hi, actually, I do. I want to hear it. Like, if you got a better way to do something, like, bring it to me. And
Yes.
then I think the last part, really, that J is I want to know. I wrote a book called Joy is My Job. And it
Good.
really started in my family life of realizing that I was burnt out. And my husband and I decided that we were going to make joy our job. And we
Mm.
hung a whiteboard in our bedroom.
Mm.
And we started to like come up with fun things to do, even in like 5, 10, 15-minute increments.
Mhm.
And when I think about your team members, I want to know, are they having any joy?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, and I want to know both from a little bit of like personal perspective, but also their business perspective too. Like, what do you enjoy about your job? Like, what
Mm.
parts are things that you really like? What do you hate? So I would say like the PB&J, there's a worksheet on my website, lisaeven.com, if you want to grab it. But that's
Definitely.
an easy way if you need like, if you're like, I don't know what words to say out loud. It
Mm.
actually has some like questions and then you can shift that. But if you start to get in those 5, 10 seconds, what do you think?
Mm.
Hey, have you ever been to Scottsdale? Do
Yes.
you like
Yes.
Scottsdale? Do you guys
Mm.
do that very often? Like you can start to open a conversation,
Mm.
and when you like someone, you stay longer. I had employees that were like tearing up when they left. They're like, "Well, I was only going to work here 2 years, and then I was going to, da da da." And I'm like, "Hi, yes, go and do the thing
Yes.
that,
Yes.
you've been going to school for or that you've
Mm.
dreamed of, but I'm going to make it darn hard for you to leave."
Yeah. And you're always happy to have them back, or that they will
Amen.
recommend your business or, the company that you're with to work for because of that culture. And yeah, it is making everything you just said there. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you could put it into hospital, you could put it into any industry, but it's
Yeah.
so important that they just realize what part they have, what part they
Yeah,
play
to
in it,
play.
isn't it? It's
Mhm.
just so important and to share that information with each other. But I love that. So P was for
People like P is really for perspective,
perspective,
right?
B
And you really just want to
perspective.
know that.
Yes.
Yep, B is for better
Mm.
ways and J is for joy.
Yes, yeah. And that joy is that thing. We have to work. It'd be lovely to,
Yeah,
to
right?
be a princess out of a fairy tale, so to speak. But we do have to work. And work gives us purpose for a start. We all
Yeah.
need money, but we have to have some form of purpose and we need to enjoy what we do. And you're right, we have people like that in the hospitality industry that, come in, it could be a job either at university or it could be a second job, saving for a car or,
Yeah.
a wedding or whatever it might be. And one of them is a very good friend of mine and he was a CEO, he was a plumber, he was building a house, he was getting married. I had him on the podcast a few weeks ago, Glenn Cushion. And And now he's a CEO of one of our major,
Oh,
and he has been for many years of one of our major venues here. But we all come in that perspective of a different way. But it's where you're getting that joy from. And it's the people
yes,
that you're around. That's what's so important, isn't it? You've got to,
it is.
yeah, yeah. And it's building that culture where people feel like, yeah, as I said, they feel like they belong, but you've got to have that
Mhm.
ripple effect. It's got to
You
go from
do.
top
And
to bottom and bottom to top.
it's kind of like a cake recipe where you're like, I need a little of this and a little bit of that
Yes.
so that you make a good cake. And sometimes you're like, that wasn't good. We need to take that out,
We'll
and
take
make a
that bit
different
out.
cake. Yeah.
Yeah, scrub that out of the recipe,
Yeah.
or we'll leave it in for our
Yeah.
competitors.
Exactly.
Now, you help leaders evaluate their team culture by looking at attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs. Now, my whole philosophy, my whole foundation of my company is based on values. And, we
Mhm.
were talking about before, if they understand what they are and those beliefs and what that ripple effect is in the
Yes.
company. And particularly values, I feel if they tie the values to disciplinary process as well as values to when they're wanting to congratulate them on something. It's more than just saying, great job, or you didn't do this well, Bob.
Yes.
It's, well, Bob, this, our values is this. What you do you feel that that aligns with it? Hey, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it brings it back to them, doesn't it? Because I think we can, as leaders, sometimes we can give them the answers, but they don't own it. So they do come out of those
No.
rooms, Lisa, going, oh, that was a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And we would too. Like I always say like try on their glasses, like see what they
Mm,
see for a minute. And it
yes.
makes it a heck of a lot easier to realize like, oh, that's why.
Mm,
I love that we're so aligned on the values piece because I
mm.
think there's organizational values and then I think there's the values that members carry. And so I would always do this thing where I would give a sheet of like basically like an 8.5 by 11 with values. And I would say,
Yes.
hey, circle your top three.
Mm.
And then oftentimes I would say, like, okay, would somebody be willing to share their top value? And I had these two people on my team, Shane and Andrew. Shane was kind of my jokester, always loud, like, just kind of annoying, to be honest, And then Andrew was kind of my straight-laced, like, get her done type of guy. And
Mm.
I'll never forget, I handed out the values worksheet. I said, hey, would somebody be willing to share? And Shane, in an aggressive, like, way, throws up his arm, like, I can't not call on him, basically. And I'm like, Shane, hello, hi, what's your top value? And I could see Andrew because he's annoyed by Shane. I could
Oh,
see him like out of the corner of my eye. And I, just almost being like, why are we here?
yes.
And I wanted to be like, I can hear you sighing, but I didn't say it. I just let it go. And I said, Shane, what's your top value? And he goes, humor. And he took a bow.
Mm.
And about half the room laughed and half of the room didn't.
Mm.
And after the meeting, I went over and sorry, during the meeting, I was like, where did that come from? Like, how did you get it? And
Mm.
he says, when you have a crappy childhood? And I
Mm.
said, yeah. And he goes, yeah, you make jokes. And then
Mm.
you keep making jokes
Mm.
because it makes people happy. And I said,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like the room went silent. Later after the meeting, I went up to him and I was like, hi, thank you for sharing. You got a little
Mm.
serious there. And he's like, I know, I did. And I was like, hey, I want to honor that value.
Mm.
I'm thinking, can you tell a joke at our morning meeting? And
Mm.
he's like, does it need to be work appropriate? And I was like, yes, sir, it does. And he's like, he laughed, he turns away from me and goes back to his computer. And he's like, I am not the right man for the job. And I was like, thinking to myself, you don't know me, man. And I turned to him and I said, Shane, I believe in you.
Yes.
And it was funny, for months, he would bring a joke to morning meeting, and it
Mm.
really gave him the spotlight to be seen as that.
Yes.
And then when
Yes.
his wife went out for maternity leave, I sent an email to the team and was like, hey, Shane's out. I kid
Mm.
you not, we get to morning meeting, and Andrew raises his hand and he goes, Shane's gone today. And I was like, yeah,
Wow.
Shane's
Wow.
gone. And kind
Wow.
of in a like, what do you have to say about that? I was like, okay.
Yes.
And he goes, well, I looked up a joke.
Mm. Oh.
And I think that with the sweet moment of
Mm.
it was Shane and Andrew had always been frenemies. They
Yes.
were annoyed by each other, but as soon as
Mm.
they realized like this value is important and this is where they got it,
Mm.
all of a sudden we were building bridges. And
Yes. Yes.
again, that ripple effect was really quite clear. And I think to your point of just like the organizational values, but we carry them around
Mm.
everywhere we go, whether we're
Yes.
excited or angry or, they don't trust me. And
Mm.
it's kind of like, how can you shift and shape your values to make sure they align and that oh, that's why you're always being like loud and
Yes,
funny.
yes,
Now I
yes.
like you better.
Yeah. And it's we don't understand until like Shane shared then exactly what it was because I think that humor does hide a lot of pain in with
Yeah.
some people, but it just took that moment for the rest of the team to go, perhaps we judged that him incorrectly because we
Yeah.
just see what's on the outside, not what that basis is. But I think values the. I know you were saying we have to shift and we adjust. And I think I think we need to adapt them at times to others in the team
Yeah.
to motivate them and understand well what is their value. How can I connect with that value, even though it may not be one of my top three or my
Top
top
ones.
eight?
Yeah.
But how do I do that? But also I say to people, when you know that your values are not congruent with the organization, it doesn't mean they're
Yeah.
right or you're wrong or vice versa. It just means you're not the right person in the right place. And for your health, move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Really.
Amen. It's
Yeah,
so true.
because I always share, before I started my business 31 years ago, I had the worst job interview my entire life, and it was all about the values. And even though it was good money, it was close to home because, at that stage it was really hard what I was going through. I thought, I'm not, it was my values that got on that phone the next day and said,
Yeah.
no, thank you. And I started my
Yeah.
business, literally hung the shingle out the door. I thought, oh, well, I'll work with this on what my
Wow.
skill is and grow it into this massive company. But it was all of understanding I wasn't going to let my values go and work for somewhere just for the money or the convenience. And I think
Yeah.
we all need to stop. And I know people may say, oh, well, that's very easy for you to say, Michelle. Well, in that circumstances back then, it wasn't easy and I had to work hard like we all do. But it was my values that ensured that I got this far, not just
Yeah.
taking that on. And I think people need to see that. And it's nothing wrong. I always have a joke, Lisa, when I roll out my management program, with clients, and all they say to the CEO, now, before you see the sign, the dotted line, I say, I'm going to let you know, you may lose one or two managers. And they go, what? And I said,
Yeah.
well, I'm not promising you, but they'll also feel when we gather together, every month, maybe for 6 months plus, that they're going to see, look, that's a great team, but this is not the team
It's not a fit.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a fit. And I said, isn't it great when they see that and you also see, oh, lovely people, but we're not together. And that's where your values piece comes in, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. And I love the story and to hear the background of like how you really decided to get started. I mean, that's impressive in itself.
Yeah, and I think when you're in it, like in the weeds, you don't really think
Yeah.
about it. It's only been the last few years because I never used to talk about it, and I thought, oh, because people go, wow, three
Yeah.
decades in business, and I'm going, yeah, it is an achievement, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. I'm just
But
getting started over here with like, 5 or 6 years. So I'm like clapping, like, oh, good work.
yes, yeah, and I think and I don't feel like I want to retire because I still love what I do, and it's because it's
Yeah.
that values piece. I've never taken on a client that I didn't want to work with. And that to me is what it's crucial. It's easy to go, oh well, it's good. No, it has to be
Yeah.
aligned with you. And yeah, sometimes that means you're eating, bread and butter.
Ramen
Other
noodles.
times you're at the steakhouse. But
Yeah. I love that.
It's one. So what's I know you've used Shane there as an example there of how we could build that team culture. Have you got any other ideas for, leaders listening going, okay, I've got an organization. We've now got 4 generations within our
Yep.
workplace. And for many, they're even getting the alphas in now, they could be the 14,
Yeah.
15-year-olds. How do they create a culture when you're going from people that are baby boomers who have come from this very dictatorial, space of either being a leader or being led by
Yeah.
somebody to now ones that are, it's, with our Gen Zs, our biggest cohort in the workplace the next decade it's all about this group work mentality. And then you've got your alphas, they're off the Richter scale, the poor X's that half we forget. And then we've got the Ys that are the parents of the alphas thinking, what have we done?
Yeah.
I'm saying that tongue in cheek. So how does that leader look at that group and go, okay, how do I create a culture of these generations that have got different beliefs and values?
Yeah, and I think there's like two little pockets of that I might mention. Number one, I think your communication is going to look a little bit different. If
Mm.
you can be nimble as a leader, I have a 13-year-old son, and he will text me more words than he will say. Right? Like he will text me. 10 more words than he would say out loud. And so sometimes when I need something, I use his mode of communication because I know it's going to be better. Now, that's
Yes.
not always the case. We don't always get to pick that, but
Mm.
sometimes for my, like if I'm introducing an idea or I want perspective, I'll introduce it verbally. I'll ask in the room, like, hey, what do you think? And then I'll follow that up with something electronic of like, what'd you think? And I
Mm.
literally will get 10 more words out of my younger folks because that's their like that's comforting to them. Whereas my
Yes.
boomers, they're like, oh, not, some of them are really techie, but a lot of them are like, do I have to do the thing where I
Yes.
type it all up? And I'm like, no, actually, give it to me. I can do that part for you. So I
Yes.
think that's a hint. And then the
Mm.
other thing, like really quick story, I had a gentleman on my team, bushy hair, like big silver bushy hair, and I laugh because he hated our potlucks and all of our engagement activities. And we would do this thing every day where I would say to him, good morning, Paul, how are you? And he'd say, good morning, Lisa, I'm 2 years and sunny. And I was like, what in the world is 2 years and sunny? I was telling another leader about it. I'm like, I got this guy. He hates every engagement activity. Like he'll be complaining about the potluck at the potluck. Like, I
Yeah.
hate this. And I'm like, and I do this thing every morning with him where we do the 2 years and sunny. And he goes, I don't know what to do about the potlucks, but I think he's talking about his retirement forecast. Like he logs onto his portal
Oh,
and he
right.
sees 2 years and sunny.
Mm.
And it was funny, around that time I was getting ready to go on vacation. We went to Sweden
Hmm.
and we heard you could take a ferry over to Finland.
Yeah, I've
And
been to Finland. It's beautiful.
oh, it's
Yes.
amazing. So we
Yes.
get on, we get go to get on this boat. There, we went with a friend couple, and the woman who welcomed us to the ship, talk about hospitality, she literally solved all of my Paul problems. Because we get to the top of the ship, 2 by 2, it's my
Yes.
girlfriend and I and our husbands. And she goes, welcome to the Symphony. That was the name of the boat. And she's like, hey, we've got casinos and restaurants and all the things. She's pointing out all the amenities, live entertainment. My girlfriend and I are like, live entertainment? And our spouses are like, casinos. And we had time because we were on vacation. We're like
Yes.
fake bickering. And she goes, hey, time out. Hi. And we turn back to her almost as if like, oh yeah, hi. And she goes, okay, let me tell you something. Not everything is for everyone. Okay.
Mm.
But we have something for everyone on this ship. So
Mm.
you two live entertainment, you two casinos, you go and do the thing you like.
Yes.
Welcome aboard. And
Yeah.
then we were literally like, huh. And I got back to Paul that next, when I was back and I said, hey, good morning, Paul. And he's like, good morning, the 2 years and sunny thing.
Mm.
And I said, hey, Paul, we got to talk about these potlucks. And he went into his whole like, I hate the potlucks, da 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 da. And I said, hey, quick question. Are you retiring in 2 years?
Mm.
And he kind of looked at me like, oh, you figured it out, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, he goes, maybe. And I was like, Paul, you're 2 years and sunny, my friend. I
Mhm.
got people over here 40 years and cloudy.
Yes.
40
Yeah.
years.
Mm.
Buddy, these potlucks are not for you.
Mm.
And I said, you don't have, they're not for you. Like, not everything is for everyone. So, like, could you not hate the potlucks at the potlucks?
Yes.
2 weeks
Yes.
later, someone yells to my office, you'll never guess who brought a dish to potluck. And I was like, was it Paul? And he was like, and literally like at the potluck, I said, hey, did you bring a dish to potluck? And he goes, yeah, it's for the kids.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
said, that's right. It's for the
Mm.
kids. And I
Yes.
think giving people permission and kind of saying like generationally, like this is not for you.
Mm.
Like, and if you don't like it, like it's not for you.
Mm.
You don't have to like be forced to be a part of it.
Mm.
And I think that if you can communicate in a way that they can really like give you what you need and back and forth, and then you can find ways to be like, and for my people in the crowd who don't like this, this is not for you.
Yes.
People feel so much more seen.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden they're participating in the thing that they thought they didn't like.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
pretty
and they go, oh,
powerful.
and they do get joy out of it, or at least they're showing the others that they're a team,
They're
and
a
it's
team.
not about you, the individual. I love that potluck. I always hear that word. I'm thinking, are they playing like bingo? But yeah, potluck. It's you bring a meal, don't you? You
You
bring.
bring a dish and everybody shares the dish, and it's like the funniest thing. Some people love it, some people hate it, and
Yes, yeah.
at work you can gain 1 million pounds off of the potlucks.
But it's always, I think it's a great way to learn about other people's cultures as well. You know, we are very multicultural here in Australia, as you are in America, but particularly in
Yes.
our regional areas. And I'm just thinking that is a great way. I'm going to steal that idea
Yeah.
because we find that we think people we go to work, everybody's happy, we go home and we've got our extracurricular different things that we've got to do, but we've got a lot of people that are here by themselves, whether they've come from the city
Yeah.
in Australia or they've come from overseas, and they're lonely. And as we know, loneliness is a massive, it's
Epidemic.
everywhere. 69% of Gen Z, they say, roughly looking at statistics, are loneliness. So, yes, I'm going to write that down.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you. So,
should.
clients that are listening, I'm going to be coming to you for that. I think potlucks is a great idea. Now, look, trust and presence are big parts of your message. What does
Yeah.
showing up with presence mean? Because I know you actually look like what does it actually look like in that fast-paced world and that often chaotic hospitality environment? How do you see that showing up with presence, both as a leader, but also as a person in the team to the members of guests or customers, clients? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, assuming the person's maybe not like so cranky that you can't do this, because there are
Mm.
people who you're like, oh, not today.
Yes.
But I think there's this, the easiest insight I can give is to be curious.
Mm.
And the Jerry Seinfeld, there's a really fun YouTube video. I'd have to find it, but he talks about how he's a comedian, he does his comedy show, and then he goes, what happens afterwards is everybody gets in line and they want to talk to me. And what the heck do I say to
Mm.
like 300 strangers? And
Yes.
he has this really great trick that I think that you can build trust quickly because people trust the people that they know and
Mm.
that they like. And
Yes.
so to get to
Yes.
know someone and to get them to like you, what he recommends is that you ask them questions that they have an answer to.
Mm.
Where are you from? How long
Mm.
have you lived there?
Yes.
And
Yes.
then kind of the trick to that is you ask two or three, and maybe you find a place that you can overlap. And then
Mm.
the last thing you do is you ask them a preference. So, for
Mm.
example, I live in a place that has snow. I mentioned that already. It's like, oh, how long have you lived in Iowa? Well, I lived in Iowa, but then I lived in Wisconsin, and
Mm.
then I moved back to Iowa. Oh, you have? How long did you live in Wisconsin? It's cold up there. It's like, well, I lived there 9 years. And
Yeah.
then you're into like a little bit of dialogue, and you can be like, do you like the cold? Actually, no, I hate the cold. I wish I lived in
In
Florida.
Florida.
Right? Like all of a sudden, you now have all of these
Yes.
details
Mm.
to
Mm.
be thinking about. And then you can say, hey, didn't you live in Wisconsin? I saw an article about da da da. Didn't
Mm.
you say you hate the cold? Look at this cheap flight I saw on Expedia. Like
Yeah.
you now have, I always say, like nuggets to pivot from.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
a really great way
Mm.
to act curious and then to follow up with some of those like literally like questions they have the answer to, like specific questions followed by
Mm.
preference.
Yes.
You'd be
Yes.
shocked what people will tell you.
Mm. And I love that. And, I have a little bit of a game. I call it, even with the training, whether it's the front line or the leadership team, finding things that you've got in common, and I always go,
Yeah.
don't say we've got brown hair or we work in the same place. But when you find that you've got something in common, it's also the other ones hear about it. And it creates that feeling that you're part of something. And it was funny, it
Yes.
was only yesterday, I'm up in this regional area in Queensland and I had two of the team and, one was an older gentleman, he was a big gruff, a really
Yeah.
lovely man. But, he was this really solid man. And then the other chap he was only young, he'd only, just come into the industry, but really love it. And
Yeah.
they were sitting there, I said, well, find your commonalities. Anyway, then it got down to it. They shared it. They both loved cross stitch. You wouldn't even have thought
I
about
mean,
it.
that's like lottery ticket worthy.
Yeah,
Like,
and
what
I
are the
said, how
odds
did
of
you get to
that?
that? And the one guy goes, he goes, well, I love I do blacksmithing. So he's talking about the chap how he does blacksmithing and he's doing leather work. And the other guy says, oh yes, well I do some sort of he was doing some sort of sewing or something. And then they both whispered, do you like cross stitch? And the other one goes, yes. And they started to giggle like, they're just like little kids because they said,
Oh,
you could see, they've been working with each other for quite a while, but now they've got this
never
commonality.
knew.
And then somebody else said, well, you know what? I actually crochet, which was another guy. And I just see, here they were, all shapes and sizes, all different backgrounds, and they've found this
Yeah,
commonality that they
I
can,
love that.
yeah. But it was just for that moment of it starts that conversation. And we find that, well, particularly in hospitality where we're expecting all our teams to talk to our members and guests when they come through
Yeah.
the door. And they're always the biggest pushers. Well, what I'm going to say, but what
What
you
am I
were
gonna
saying then,
say?
Lisa, just start and then go back and go, oh my gosh, did you hear about this? Or they've had this weather storm. And we come together, don't we? It's
We
just,
do. The law of similarity is amazing. Like finding
yes,
things that are similar, it truly does. I think even in today's, world being a little bit like disjointed, I often say like we need more law of similarity. Like we need to
yes,
find that like
yes.
human component that brings
Mm.
us together. And I love your story. That's amazing.
I just blown away. I thought, because you have this perception of what a person looks like with cross stitch. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of this, lady sitting there, some, Edwardian
Teeny
lady with it on her
tiny.
lap. I think you're not, and you could just see everybody going, "Wow, that is really cool." I think we could talk for ages, Lisa.
Oh,
I'm
we
just thinking,
could.
if I want this ripple effect, but I don't know where to start, what's one small shift that can make this week that could spark a bigger change? What would you suggest to somebody listening?
Yeah. I think the thing that I would encourage you to do, because sometimes we're afraid to fail or afraid to like do the thing. And I would suggest that you pretend like you're a scientist, big geeky goggles, like a beaker in hand, and you just run a little experiment. Right? Because if we give ourselves permission to just like try something and if it fails, just like a scientist would fail over and over and over again, it feels easier to be able to say, well, it's okay. It was just an experiment. And so I give you full blown permission to get out there and do a little bit of experimenting, whether it's with your team or, even one on one conversations. There really are some amazing things. You just have to try a little. And if it fails and you're like, oh, that didn't go good, you're like, okay, that's okay. That was just an experiment. I did not fail fully. And yeah, get out there and create some amazing ripple effect.
Just get out there now, Lisa. I'd love you to share because I'll put it in the show notes. But if you can just share how my listeners can contact you, could you hold that book up again? I'm sure they can
Yeah.
buy that online, but also repeat at that line where you said they could go and find out the
Yes.
BJs. Yeah.
They can go to my website, lisaeven.com.
Mhm.
And then I'm also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And yeah, I'd love to follow along. I do a weekly leadership email. You can get on that. There's
Perfect.
articles and yeah, let's be friends.
Yes. And the name of the podcast again is?
Have good ripple effect.
Perfect. Thank you very much for joining me today, Lisa. So I think we could talk for a lot longer. I look forward to hopefully meeting you one day in person. Listeners,
Yeah.
I'm sure you've enjoyed today. Reach out to Lisa, find out some more, and start creating that ripple effect in your organization. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.